My name is Adeline Mercer. I'm 36 years old, and the night my marriage ended didn't come with shouting, broken glass, or some dramatic storm out. It ended with a smile, a room full of people, and a joke that wasn't a joke. If you had walked into our house that evening, you would have thought everything was perfect. Soft lighting, wine already breathing on the counter, a table set with precision, not a fork out of place. Because this wasn't just dinner. According to my husband, Caleb Mercer, this was strategy. If tonight goes well, he'd told me earlier that week, adjusting his tie in the mirror, it puts me on the radar for senior accounts. Not our future. Not our life. His. That should have been my first clue. By 7, the house was full. His boss, senior executives, his coworker, Ethan, and Ethan's wife. People with polished smiles and eyes that measured everything, including me. I played my role perfectly. Polite, warm, effortless. Because that's what I'd always been in this marriage. The stable one. The quiet support. The one who made things work while he took credit for the results. Dinner started well. Laughter. Stories. The usual conversations about marriage, compromises, sacrifices, how we make it work. I noticed something, though. Every time Caleb spoke, he positioned himself as the center, the provider, the driver, the one carrying the weight. And me, a footnote. Subtle, but intentional. Yeah, it counts. Then it happened. He stood up, glass raised. That smile, the one I used to think meant pride. Now I realize it meant performance. For those of you who don't know, he began, voice smooth, confident. Adeline and I have been married for 8 years. Light applause. A few smiles. I looked up at him. Just for a second, I thought he might say something real. Something kind. Something that acknowledged what we built. That was my mistake. He glanced at me, paused, then smirked. When I married her, he said, I thought I was getting the full package. Smart, composed, impressive in every way. Another pause. And then, turns out, some packages are a lot less exciting than advertised. A few nervous chuckles. He wasn't done. He leaned slightly forward, lowering his voice just enough to make people listen harder. Let's just say, she's more safe investment than high return. That one landed. Hard. Because it wasn't just an insult. It was a reduction of everything I was into something replaceable. Tat. The room went quiet. Not loud quiet. The uncomfortable kind, where people look down at their plates but still listen. I saw Ethan glance at Caleb, quick, knowing, and for the first time that night, something clicked. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't wine talking. This was planned. Yeah. I didn't react right away, didn't flinch, didn't argue. I let the silence stretch, let it breathe, let it settle into the room like smoke. Caleb smiled, thinking he'd won the moment, thinking I'd absorb it, like always. Then I leaned back in my chair, slow, deliberate, and I started clapping. Once, twice, soft, controlled. Every eye turned to me, including his. Confused now. Good. Wow, I said calmly. 8 years of marriage, and that's the best you've got? A few people shifted in their seats. I held his gaze. Steady. You know what, Caleb? I continued, voice even. Thank you. His smile faltered. Just a little. You just made this very easy for me. A beat. This marriage is over. Dead silence. Not awkward this time. Absolute. His boss blinked. Ethan froze. Someone actually set their glass down too hard. Caleb stared at me like I'd spoken a language he didn't understand. What? He said, half laughing. Adeline, don't... I don't stay where I'm not respected, I cut in. Still calm. Still controlled. And tonight you made it very clear where I stand. No yelling. No scene. Just finality. And that scared him more than anything. The dinner collapsed after that. 5 minutes of forced conversation. Then excuses. Then empty chairs. By 9:30, the house was silent again. Except for us. Caleb tried to recover. Of course he did. Oh, come on, he said, running a hand through his hair. You're being dramatic. It was a joke. I didn't respond. I just started clearing plates. Slowly. Methodically. Like he wasn't even there. Yeah. He hated that. Being ignored. Adeline, he snapped. Seriously, you're overreacting. Still nothing. Just the sound of dishes. Stacking. Running water. Control. By midnight, he gave up. Went upstairs. Probably rehearsing a new version of the story where he was the victim. Yes. I was on the couch when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Then I opened it. Your husband humiliated you tonight. Pause. My chest tightened. Next message. He's been cheating on you for months. I sat up. Cold. Focused. Who is this? I typed. The reply came instantly. Lena, Ethan's wife. A beat. Then, I have proof if you want it. I stared at the screen. At the words. at the shift happening in real time. Because suddenly, that look between Caleb and Ethan earlier, that silence, that tension, it all made sense. Tomorrow, she added. Coffee shop downtown. I'll show you everything. I leaned back slowly. Phone still in my hand. The house quiet. Too quiet. Yeah. So this wasn't just disrespect. It wasn't just humiliation. It was betrayal. Layered. Calculated. Ongoing. Pain. Upstairs, I could hear Caleb moving around. Comfortable. Confident. Certain he still had control. I looked down at the message again, then locked my phone, placed it beside me, and exhaled. Slow, steady, decided. Exits. He thought tonight was his performance, his moment, his power play. And you. He had no idea. It was the beginning of his downfall. And this time, I wasn't going to react. I was going to plan. The next morning, Caleb came downstairs smiling like nothing had happened. That alone told me exactly who I had married. He wore gray lounge pants and a black t-shirt, coffee mug in hand, hair still messy from sleep, like he was auditioning for the role of charming husband in a commercial no one asked for. Morning, he said lightly. I didn't answer right away. I just stirred my coffee and let the silence sit between us. He pulled out the chair across from me and sat down, studying my face. So, about last night. There it was, the cleanup, the revision, the part where he'd rewrite cruelty into misunderstanding and expect me to help him do it. Look, he said, exhaling through his nose. I had a few drinks. I was playing to the room. It got away from me. I raised my eyes to him. Playing to the room? He gave a short, helpless laugh. You know what I mean. No, I said. Actually, I don't. His jaw tightened for half a second. Then he softened his voice. Adeline, come on, it was one comment. One comment. As if humiliation only counted when repeated enough times. As if the audience didn't matter. As if intention didn't exist. You stood in our house, I said quietly, in front of your coworkers, and reduced me to a punchline. He looked irritated now, but careful not to show too much of it. That's not what That is exactly what you did. He stared at me. I stared back. And for the first time in a long time, I watched him realize that I wasn't going to do the usual thing. No smoothing it over. No making his bad behavior easier to live with. No comforting him for hurting me. Then he pivoted. They always do. He leaned forward, voice lower, gentler. I love you. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was late. Because men like Caleb only reached for tenderness when arrogance stopped working. I was embarrassed, he said. I was trying to be funny. I messed up. Don't throw away 8 years over one stupid moment. If only he knew. If only he knew that a woman named Lena had already cracked open the floorboards beneath him. I let a breath out slowly. Then I looked down at my mug and softened my expression just enough. Maybe I overreacted. The relief in his face was instant. Ugly, but useful. He reached across the table and took my hand. I knew you'd calm down. Of course he did. Because in his mind, I always would. He squeezed my fingers like this was settled. Like the play had worked. Like I was back in place. I gave him a faint smile. Let's just move on. And just like that, he relaxed. The arrogance came back into his shoulders. The confidence returned to his mouth. He stood, kissed the top of my head, and said, "That's my girl." I kept smiling until he walked out of the kitchen. Then I pulled my hand back and wiped it on my robe. By noon, I was downtown. The coffee shop Lena chose was quiet, narrow, and half hidden between a bookstore and a travel agency that looked like it had been there since the 90s. She was already inside. Corner table, phone in hand. No makeup beyond what she needed. No theatrical sadness. Just exhaustion sharpened into purpose. That made me trust her more than any tears would have. When I approached, she stood. Adeline? Yes, I'm Lena. We shook hands. Her grip was firm. Not warm, not cold, just steady, like someone holding herself together on purpose. Once we sat, she didn't waste time. 3 weeks ago, she said, unlocking her phone, I found messages on Ethan's laptop. She slid the device across the table. At first, it looked like any normal thread. Then I started reading, and my stomach dropped. There were months of messages between Caleb and Ethan. Not flirtation, not ambiguity. An affair, fully formed. Hotel bookings. Deleted plans rewritten in code. Jokes about sneaking around. Photos. I scrolled further. Can't wait to see you tonight. Same room as last time? She thinks I'm at a client dinner. Then, the one that made my fingers go cold. Does Adeline suspect anything? A pause in the thread. Then Caleb's reply. Please, she's too busy being understanding. I stopped breathing for a second. Lena watched me quietly. There's more, she said. She pulled a folder from her bag. Manila. Neat. Organized. Inside were printed hotel receipts, restaurant charges, screenshots, timestamps, and copies of card statements. My eyes skimmed through them like my brain was refusing to understand what it already understood. Thursday night hotel stay. A Saturday lunch I remembered because Caleb told me he was helping Ethan prepare for a department presentation. A spa charge he'd explained away as part of a client package. Lena flipped to another page. This one, she said, tapping a highlighted charge, was paid from their joint corporate card before Ethan moved it. Then another. And this dinner? Same night he told me he was stuck in traffic for 3 hours. I should have been shaking. I should have cried. That's what people expect women to do when they're betrayed. Break. Fold. Collapse where everyone can see it. But that wasn't what happened. What happened was colder. Cleaner. Every emotion I might have had narrowed into one sharp line. I looked up at her. How long? From what I can prove, around 7 months. 7 months. 7 months of him coming home to me, sleeping next to me, letting me cook for him, listen to him, support him, smooth out his temper, help him rehearse presentations, host his dinner parties. 7 months. Dead. Why tell me now? I asked. Lena held my gaze. Because last night I watched your husband humiliate you in front of a room full of people, and then I watched Ethan sit there pretending he didn't know why. Her mouth tightened. I'm done protecting either of them. That I understood. Perfectly. I leaned back in my chair. The coffee between us had gone untouched. What do you want? Lena didn't hesitate. The truth documented properly. Something in me stilled. Not revenge. Not chaos. Not screaming. Documentation. Precision. My kind of language. I'm a corporate attorney, she added. I don't move without evidence. That almost made me smile. Of course she was. Of course the woman sitting across from me, holding her own devastation together with a straight spine and a color-coded folder, was a lawyer. And what exactly are you proposing? I asked. Her answer came calm. We keep them comfortable. And that got my full attention. She folded her hands on the table. No confrontation, no emotional speeches, no warning. You go home and act normal. So do I. We let them believe they're safe. Meanwhile, we collect everything. Everything? Financial records, timeline matches, travel overlap, device backups, surveillance if needed, anything they've hidden. The air between us changed. Not because it got lighter, because it got useful. They think they're smarter than us, she said. People like that get sloppy. I looked back down at the folder, then at my reflection in the dark window beside us. For the first time since last night, I felt something steadier than pain. Direction. So, I said, we let them keep digging. Lena gave a small nod. Until the hole is too deep to climb out of. A slow breath left me. Then finally, I smiled. Not because I was okay. Because I wasn't. But because I was done being blindsided. I can do that, I said. I figured you could. Yeah. From that moment on, I started living 2 lives. The first one was the version Caleb saw. The forgiving wife. Softer voice. Looser shoulders. No more tension at breakfast. No more distant stares. I let him believe the storm had passed. And once he believed that, he got careless fast. He started leaving his phone face up again. Started showering without taking it into the bathroom. Started slipping into the smugness of a man convinced he'd restored control. I even watched him text at the dinner table one night and smile down at the screen before flipping it over. Before, that might have broken something in me. Now, I just memorized the time. 8:17 p.m. Added it to the file later. Lena moved quickly. Within 4 days, she had a private investigator. Not the cheap kind. Not someone hiding in bushes with a grainy camera and a tragic sense of discretion. This man was clinical. He logged arrivals, departures, license plates, timestamps. By the second week, he had high-resolution photos of Caleb and Ethan entering a hotel downtown at 8:46 p.m. on a Wednesday. At 8:52, Caleb texted me. Running late, team dinner dragged out. I screenshotted it and sent it straight to Lena. Her reply came back instantly. Perfect. The receipts started stacking next. Caleb had been pushing hard for more professional expenses lately. A new suit, luxury grooming, private dinners. He called them image investments. I called the bank and quietly ordered duplicate monthly statements under the excuse of budgeting for tax season. By the time the next envelope came in, I was ready. And there it was. A trail. Not obvious at first glance. That was the clever part. A charge here. A transfer there. A restaurant bill. Just under the amount that would trigger discussion. Hotel incidentals. Ride shares. Gym add-ons. Tiny dishonesties woven so neatly into daily life that most people wouldn't catch them. But I did. And Lena did. And when we layered Caleb's charges beside Ethan's withdrawals, a pattern emerged so clean it made me sick. Then came the laptop. I had never gone through it before, partly out of respect, partly because I never imagined I would need to. But betrayal changes your relationship with privacy. One Thursday night, Caleb left claiming he had a late networking dinner. I waited 10 minutes after his car pulled out. Then I went to his office, opened the laptop, entered the password I'd watched him type 100 times without ever needing to care. It unlocked on the first try. That should have hurt more than it did. Instead, it just felt predictable. At first, there was nothing. Work folders, presentations, budgets, meaningless noise. Then I found one titled Quarterly Planning. Too neat, too generic, too careful. I clicked it. Inside were subfolders, one of them named Archive. Inside that, photos, videos, hotel rooms, his car, and one set that made the blood in my face disappear. Our bedroom. My hand froze on the mouse. Not because I was surprised anymore, because there is something uniquely violating about seeing your own home repurposed into someone else's lie. I closed my eyes once, opened them, plugged in an external drive, copied everything. No shaking, no tears, just transfer progress moving across the screen like a countdown. I thought that would be the worst part. It wasn't. The worst part was a document, a plain one, untitled at first glance, but once opened, clearly personal. A journal, not romantic, not conflicted, no guilt, just contempt. Page after page of Caleb narrating his own selfishness like it made him superior. Adeline is stable, but stability is not the same thing as excitement. Ethan understands ambition in a way she never will. I can probably keep things smooth at home until the timing is right. Then the line that turned everything inside me into ice. She'd probably apologize if I told her the truth. That's how trained she is to preserve peace. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Not because it hurt, because it clarified everything. He didn't just betray me. He had rewritten me in his head into someone too loyal to fight back. Someone useful. Someone manageable. Someone already defeated. Mom? I copied the journal too. Then I wiped the drive history, closed the folder, shut the laptop, and returned everything to its exact angle on the desk. By the time Caleb came home, I was on the couch in soft clothes, lamp on, a book open in my lap. He kissed my forehead. Miss me? I looked up and smiled gently. A little. He smiled back like he had any right to, then went to shower. And I sat there listening to the water run, thinking how easy it is for people to mistake calm for weakness. Lena and I met twice a week after that. Coffee shops. Her office once after hours. My car once in a parking garage because we both happened to be in the area and didn't feel like pretending to be casual in public. We built the case piece by piece. PI images, phone logs, statements, emails, copies of the journal, backed up texts. There was even evidence Caleb had used our joint account to help cover Ethan's boutique gym membership after Ethan complained about cash flow. I laughed when I saw that one. Actually laughed. It sounded strange coming out of me. Lena noticed. What? I shook my head. He risked his marriage, career, and dignity for a man who needed help paying for deadlifts. For the first time since we met, she laughed too. Short, sharp, tired, but real. They really do think they're epic, she said. They're not epic, I replied. They're sloppy. By the end of the month, we weren't guessing anymore. We had proof. Enough to destroy any lie they tried to build later. Enough to end marriages. Enough to end careers. Enough to make every smug little look Caleb had given me feel temporary. And then, one night, I got something even better than evidence. I got confirmation of his plan. I was upstairs in my office when I heard him downstairs on the phone. I wasn't trying to listen. He just wasn't bothering to keep his voice down. After your promotion, he said. Lower now, more intimate. I'll figure out the exit. She still thinks we're fixing things. A pause, then a laugh. Soft. Cruel. No, she's not going anywhere. She likes being needed too much. I stood completely still. The room around me went silent. Not because he stopped talking. Because everything in me did. There it was. Not just the affair. Not just the mockery. The plan. Use me for stability. Use me for image. Use me until the next door opened. Then discard me cleanly. He needs something. The next morning I told Lena. She leaned back in her chair, expression unreadable. So, she said, he's building his future on Ethan's promotion. Apparently. Her mouth curved slightly. That makes this even better. I looked at her, and in that moment, I knew she'd already moved past evidence. She was thinking about timing, about placement, about blast radius. What are you thinking? I asked. Lena's eyes held mine. We don't just end this privately. A beat. We make sure the right room sees it happen. I felt the first real spark of anticipation. Cold, controlled, dangerous. And I knew the next phase had begun. The moment Lena said it out loud, "We make sure the right room sees it happen." Everything shifted. Up until then, we had been collecting, observing, documenting. Now, we were designing. How public? I asked. Lena didn't hesitate. Controlled public, not messy, not emotional, strategic. That was the key difference between people like us and people like Caleb. We didn't explode. We executed. She leaned forward slightly, fingers steepled. What matters most to Caleb? Status, I said instantly. And Ethan? The same, but louder. Lena nodded. Then we take it where it hurts the most. A pause. Their workplace. The idea settled between us like something inevitable. Not revenge, not chaos. Exposure. Structured. Irrefutable. Permanent. They're expecting a promotion, she continued. Ethan's been positioning for it, right? Yes, I said. Caleb thinks that's their exit strategy. He's planning to leave me after that. Lena's expression didn't change, but something sharpened behind her eyes. Perfect. Dean. That word should have sounded dangerous. Instead, it sounded efficient. What are you thinking? I asked. A celebration dinner, she said. For Ethan. Framed as a surprise. Invite his department, leadership, HR, anyone who matters. I felt my pulse slow, not spike, because I could already see it. The room, the expectations, the shift. And then? I asked. And then, she said calmly, we replaced the celebration with the truth. I leaned back in my chair. For a moment, I said nothing. Just let the image play out in my head. Caleb walking in, confident. Ethan expecting applause. Everyone watching. And then, everything turning. That's not just exposure, I said quietly. That's collapse. Lena gave a small nod. Exactly. From that moment on, everything we did had direction. Every piece of evidence wasn't just collected, it was positioned. At home, I stayed exactly the same. That was the hardest part. Not confronting him, not reacting, not letting even a flicker of what I knew leak into the way I looked at him. But once you understand someone clearly enough, it gets easier to perform around them. Caleb became more relaxed by the day, more confident, more careless. He started leaving earlier, coming home later, offering less explanation. Because in his mind, he had already solved the only problem that mattered. Me. One night, he came home smiling. Actually smiling, like he'd just closed a deal. Big things coming, he said, loosening his tie as he walked in. I looked up from the couch, soft expression in place. Oh? He nodded, pouring himself a drink. Ethan's moving up. It's basically confirmed. Once that happens, everything changes. Everything. I almost admired how easily he said it. Like the word didn't include dismantling a marriage. Like it didn't include me. I choked. That's good, I said gently. You've both worked hard. He glanced at me, something almost amused in his eyes. Yeah, he said, we have. We. The word lingered. Not us. Not husband and wife. Them. Later that night, when he fell asleep, I lay beside him, staring at the ceiling. Not angry. Not sad. Just certain he had already left. He just hadn't physically moved yet.
Mesh.
Meanwhile, Lena moved fast. Invitations were sent through the right channels, disguised as a coordinated effort from within Ethan's department. A private celebration dinner. Selective. Exclusive. Important enough that people would show up. Casual enough that no one would question it. She handled the venue. Upscale. Private dining room. The kind of place where reputation mattered. Where people spoke carefully. Where embarrassment echoed. I handled the legal side. Divorce paperwork. Asset documentation. Timeline alignment. Everything indexed, labeled, and ready. If anyone questioned anything, we would have answers. Immediate. Undeniable. We built a shared archive. Every file backed up twice. Once digitally. Once physically. PI photos labeled by date and time. Call logs cross-referenced. Receipts matched against location data. The journal entries highlighted and categorized. It wasn't just evidence anymore. It was a narrative. Clear. Linear. Impossible to twist. There's no version of this where they walk away clean, Lena said one evening as we reviewed the final set. I closed the folder. No, I agreed. There isn't.
Homage.
2 weeks before the dinner, Caleb gave me the final confirmation. I wasn't even looking for it. I was upstairs in my office, going through emails, when I heard his voice downstairs. Soft. Low. Different. The version of him he never used with me anymore. I just need a little more time, he said. A pause. Then... No, she still thinks we're fixing things. I didn't move, didn't breathe louder, Didn't step closer, just listened. After your promotion, he continued, I'll handle everything. Clean break, no mess. Another pause, then a laugh. Short, confident. She won't fight it. She hates conflict too much. And I closed my eyes for a second, not because it hurt, because it confirmed everything. And the next morning, I told Lena. She listened without interrupting, then leaned back in her chair. He's building his entire future on a promotion that's not going to exist. Yes. Her lips curved slightly. That's almost poetic. There was no anger in her voice, just precision, the kind that comes when someone has already accepted what needs to be done. We'll time it perfectly, she said, right after expectations peak. I nodded. Maximum impact. Exactly. From that point on, it was just execution. At home, Caleb started talking about the future more openly. Not with me, around me. Like I was furniture that happened to be present. I might need to travel more soon, he said one evening. For work? Yeah, he replied, distracted, scrolling through his phone. I watched him for a moment, then looked back down. Of course. Every word he spoke added another layer to the file in my head. Every assumption he made about my silence. Another reinforcement of how little he actually understood me. And so much. 3 days before the dinner, Lena finalized everything. The email was drafted. Scheduled. Attachments prepared. Redacted where necessary. Clear where it mattered. Damn. Once it goes out, she said, there's no taking it back. I know. She studied me for a moment. You're sure? I met her eyes. Calm. Steady. Yes. Said. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about the affair. It was about correction. About restoring reality to a situation built entirely on manipulation. The night before the dinner, Caleb stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his suit. He looked sharp, confident, like a man on the edge of something bigger. Big night tomorrow, he said. I stood behind him, watching his reflection. It is. He smirked slightly. You'll see. Things are about to change. I held his gaze in the mirror. Soft smile. I'm sure they are. And for the first time since all of this began, I meant it. Just not in the way he thought. Yeah. By the time we left for the restaurant the next evening, everything was in place. The room, the people, the evidence, the timing. And all that was left was for them to walk in and believe they were winning. The restaurant was exactly what Lena promised. Quiet, polished, controlled, the kind of place where every detail whispered status. Soft lighting, crystal glasses, muted conversations that never quite rose above a certain level. Perfect. And then Caleb was in a good mood the entire drive there. Relaxed, confident. He even reached over at one point and squeezed my hand like we were a team again. Tonight's important, he said. I know, I replied. And I did. Just not for the reasons he thought. When we arrived, the private dining room was already buzzing. About 20 people. Ethan's department, senior managers, HR representatives, even a couple of partners Caleb had been desperate to impress. Everyone dressed sharp. Everyone smiling. Everyone expecting something. Ethan walked in shortly after we did. Same energy he always had. A little too confident. A little too rehearsed. The kind of man who thought charisma could replace substance. Caleb lit up when he saw him. Not subtly. Not professionally. Just instinctively. That alone told me everything. I caught Lena across the room. She didn't wave. Didn't smile. Just gave the slightest nod. Barely noticeable. Unless you were looking for it. Game time. Dinner started smoothly. Appetizers. Small talk. Work gossip disguised as casual conversation. Ethan played the part well, laughing at the right moments, leaning into conversations like he belonged at the center of them. Caleb stayed close to him. Too close. Mirroring him. Backing him up. Orbiting. And I watched. Observed. Stored every glance, every subtle touch, every shared look. Not because I needed more proof. Because it confirmed how bold they'd become. How untouchable they thought they were. At one point, Ethan made a joke about big changes coming soon. A few people laughed. Caleb smiled wider than anyone. I sipped my water and said nothing. Time moved exactly how Lena said it would. Predictable. Structured. Waiting. At 8:15 p.m., just after the main course plates were cleared, every phone in the room buzzed. At once. The sound cut through the conversation like a blade. People glanced down instinctively. At first, mild curiosity. Then confusion. Then, silence. I watched it spread, one face at a time. Brows furrowing, eyes widening, lips parting. A shift from polite interest to something heavier, something real. What is this? Someone murmured. Another voice lower. Oh, my God. And Caleb looked around, frowning. What's going on? No one answered him, because everyone was reading. Ethan reached for his phone, unlocked it, and I watched the exact second his expression changed. Confidence to confusion to something close to panic. Is everything okay? He asked, forcing a laugh. No one responded. Not directly, but the way people leaned away from him, that said enough. Nit. Caleb picked up his phone next. His eyes scanned the screen, then froze, completely. I didn't need to see it. I already knew what it said. The email had been sent from a verified internal address, copied to leadership, compliance, HR, and everyone in that room. Inside it, a structured evidence file, clean, organized, impossible to dismiss, hotel receipts, time-stamped photos, message screenshots, financial overlaps, even excerpts from the journal, redacted where necessary, clear where it mattered. The room went quiet, not awkward, not uncertain, final. What is this? Caleb said again, but this time his voice wasn't steady. It was thin. That's when Lena stood, slowly, deliberately. No rush, no emotion, just control. What you're all reading, she said, voice calm but carrying, is documented proof that Ethan and Caleb have been engaged in an ongoing affair for several months. The words landed like a detonation, not loud, but absolute. A ripple moved through the room. Shock, disgust, recognition, everything rearranging in real time. This includes, Lena continued, hotel records, financial transactions, communication logs, and photographic evidence, all verified, all time-stamped. She paused, let it settle, then added, and since both individuals used company time, company resources, and misrepresented professional activities to facilitate this, this is not just personal misconduct. Another beat. It is a corporate issue. Ethan stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. Sit down, someone from HR snapped. And he did, instinctively, because authority, when real, doesn't need to raise its voice twice. Caleb turned to me, eyes wide, searching. Adeline, I looked at him, finally, directly, calm. Do you want to explain? I said softly, or should I? He opened his mouth, closed it, looked around the room, at the screens, at the faces no longer friendly, at the space collapsing around him. This isn't... Then maybe start with your journal, I added. That did it. That was the moment. Because now, it wasn't just accusation. It was confirmation. A few people in the room exchanged looks. Someone let out a quiet, stunned laugh. Not amused. Disbelieving. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. This is being taken out of context. There is no context, Lena replied calmly. There is only evidence. And just like that, the illusion shattered. Completely. Right on cue, the door opened. A man stepped in. Professional. Neutral. Holding 2 envelopes. Caleb Mercer? Silence. That's me, Caleb said slowly. The man stepped forward and placed the envelope in front of him. You've been served. Then he turned. Ethan Cole? Ethan didn't respond immediately. Then, another envelope. Same motion. Same finality. Service confirmed, the man said before turning and leaving. Just like that. No music. No dramatic pause. Just consequences. The room erupted into whispers. Phones lighting up again. Messages already being sent. Information spreading. Because rooms like this, they don't contain things. They amplify them. Caleb stared at the envelope like it might disappear if he didn't touch it. Ethan looked like he was trying to calculate an escape that didn't exist. Lena stepped back. Her part done. Perfectly. I stood, smoothed my jacket, and looked at Caleb one last time. You wanted a moment, I said quietly. Now you have one. His voice cracked. Adeline, please, don't do this here. I held his gaze. Steady. You already did. A beat. Then I turned and walked out. Behind me. Chairs shifting. Voices rising. Reputations collapsing in real time. Clean. Precise. Exactly as planned. By the time we stepped into the night air, it was already over. They just didn't know how far the fall would go yet.